The notification sound from Felicia's phone cut through our kitchen like a knife at 3 in the morning. I watched my wife of 12 years reach for it, with the urgency of a paramedic responding to a cardiac arrest. Her face glowed blue in the darkness as she typed furiously, a smile creeping across her lips that I hadn't seen directed at me in months. "Work emergency?" I asked, though we both knew it wasn't. "Just Brad," she said without looking up. "He's having a rough night. Sometimes we cuddle when he's stressed. It's completely platonic, Alex. If you don't understand that kind of emotional support, that's your problem, not mine." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline that never came. Felicia Mercer, creative director at Pacific Northwest's hottest advertising agency, had just told me she cuddles with her work husband, and somehow made it sound like my failure to comprehend this arrangement was a character flaw. "Platonic cuddling," I repeated slowly, tasting each word like it might poison me. "With Brad Halverson, at 3 a.m. Don't be such a Neanderthal, Alex. Modern relationships require emotional intelligence. Brad and I have a deep creative partnership. Physical comfort is part of that bond." I nodded thoughtfully, as if this revelation had unlocked some profound truth about human connection. Inside, my cybersecurity-trained mind was already cataloging the inconsistencies, the red flags, the obvious lies wrapped in therapeutic buzzwords. "You know what? You're absolutely right," I said, sliding out of bed. "I should be more supportive of your professional cuddling career." "Rosita Ken." Felicia's eyes narrowed slightly, but she was too busy typing sweet nothings to her work husband to fully process my tone. I padded downstairs to my home office, where 3 monitors hummed quietly in the darkness. 20 years in cybersecurity had taught me that the most dangerous threats often came wrapped in innocent explanations. I opened my laptop and began typing. Not hacking. I wasn't about to compromise my professional ethics for personal drama, but I was about to cancel some reservations. See, tomorrow was Felicia's 39th birthday. I'd spent weeks planning the perfect celebration: brunch at Canlis, afternoon spa treatments at the Four Seasons, and dinner reservations at the Walrus and the Carpenter that had required calling in favors. The whole day would cost me nearly $2,000, money I'd been saving for months. But if my wife preferred platonic cuddling with Brad to actual intimacy with her husband, perhaps she'd prefer to celebrate with him too. I started with the restaurant. "I need to cancel my reservation for tomorrow night under Mercer," I told the sleepy hostess. "Any particular reason for the cancellation?" I paused, considering my options. "Let's go with no longer needed due to alternative arrangements." Next came the spa, then the brunch reservation. Each cancellation felt like removing a Band-Aid, a sharp sting followed by unexpected relief. By 4 a.m., Felicia's birthday had been completely erased from the service industry's collective memory. I climbed back into bed, just as Felicia was finally putting down her phone. She curled up next to me with a contented sigh, probably still warm from her digital cuddle session. "Good night, honey," she whispered. "Thanks for being so understanding about Brad. Wouldn't dream of standing in the way of true love," I murmured into my pillow. The next morning, Felicia bounced around the kitchen with unusual energy, clearly expecting birthday princess treatment. She kept glancing at her phone, probably hoping Brad would remember to send morning birthday wishes between his other cuddle appointments. "So," she said, buttering her toast with theatrical precision, "what time should I be ready for brunch?" I looked up from my coffee with genuine confusion. "Brunch? Did we have plans?" Her fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "Alex, it's my birthday. You made reservations at Canlis weeks ago." "Oh, that. Yeah, I canceled those. Figured you might want to celebrate with Brad instead. You know, since you two have such a deep emotional connection and all." The color drained from Felicia's face so quickly I worried she might faint. "You canceled my birthday reservations." "All of them, actually. Spa, dinner, the works. I mean, why would you want to spend your special day with your emotionally stunted Neanderthal husband when you could be platonically cuddling with your work soulmate?" Felicia's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "Alex, you can't just cancel everything. I told my friends we were going to Canlis. Then I guess you'll have to explain why your husband suddenly became less important than your cuddle buddy. Should make for interesting conversation." She grabbed her phone and started dialing frantically, probably hoping to resurrect our reservations through sheer force of will. I finished my coffee and headed upstairs to shower, leaving her to discover that popular restaurants don't typically hold tables for women whose husbands have publicly declared them no longer needed. By noon, my phone was buzzing with increasingly frantic texts from Felicia's friends. Apparently, she'd shown up at Canlis anyway, hoping to charm her way into a table. The hostess had politely explained that Mr. Mercer had canceled due to alternative arrangements, and suggested she might want to discuss the situation with her husband. The public meltdown that followed became legendary among Seattle's brunch crowd. Felicia Mercer, the poised creative director who commanded respect in boardrooms across the city, had been reduced to tears in front of a restaurant full of strangers because her husband had prioritized her emotional honesty over her birthday expectations. I watched the drama unfold from a coffee shop across the street, sipping a latte and enjoying the show. She wasn't crying because she missed me. She was crying because she'd lost a free $2,000 birthday celebration. The distinction mattered more than I'd expected. When Felicia finally stormed home that evening, I was waiting in the living room with her iPad open on the coffee table. She'd left it unlocked that morning in her rush to salvage her birthday plans, and I'd taken the liberty of reviewing her recent text conversations. "Let's talk about Platonic," I said, gesturing to the screen filled with messages that would make a romance novelist blush. Felicia stood frozen in our doorway, her mascara smeared from the day's humiliations, staring at her own words glowing on the iPad screen. The messages painted a picture of an affair that had been going on for months, complete with hotel receipts, intimate photos, and detailed plans for their future together. "Alex, I can explain. Please do. I'm particularly curious about this message from last Tuesday, where you told Brad you loved him more than you'd ever loved anyone. Very platonic, very professional." She moved toward the couch like a woman walking to her execution. "You went through my private messages. You left your iPad open on the kitchen counter. I was looking for the weather app and found your love letters instead. Funny how that works." I scrolled through the conversation history, reading highlights aloud like a prosecutor presenting evidence. "I can't wait to leave Alex and start our real life together. He's so boring compared to you. The sex with him is terrible, but with you it's like fireworks. Stop it, Alex, please. Oh, but we're just getting to the good part. Here's where you and Brad discussed draining our joint savings account to fund your romantic getaway to Cabo. Very thorough planning for a platonic relationship." Felicia collapsed onto the couch, her carefully constructed facade finally crumbling. "I never meant for you to find out this way." "How exactly did you mean for me to find out? Were you planning to send a memo? Maybe a PowerPoint presentation about your transition from wife to Brad's girlfriend?" She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "I was going to tell you eventually. I just needed more time to figure out the logistics." "The logistics of stealing my money and running off with your work husband? Yeah, that does sound complicated." I closed the iPad and leaned back in my chair, studying the woman I'd married 12 years ago. Felicia had always been ambitious, always a little self-centered, but I'd never imagined she was capable of this level of betrayal. The affair was bad enough, but the financial planning behind it felt like a knife twist. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. "Tomorrow morning, I'm opening a new bank account. I'm transferring exactly half of our joint savings, which is more than generous considering you were planning to take all of it. You can keep this house, your car, and whatever dignity you have left after today's restaurant performance. Alex, we can work through this. Marriage counseling, couples therapy." The time for therapy was before you started planning your exit strategy with Brad. Now we're in damage control mode. I stood up and walked toward the stairs, then paused. "Oh, and Felicia? Next time you want to have an affair, you might want to date someone who's not stupid enough to leave digital evidence everywhere. Brad's been using our shared Netflix account to watch romantic comedies with his other girlfriend. Yes, there's another one. Her name's Jessica, and she works at his gym." The look of devastation on Felicia's face almost made me feel sorry for her. Almost. Over the next few days, I threw myself into investigation mode. My cybersecurity background had taught me to think like both a detective and a criminal, to anticipate moves and countermoves. If Felicia and Brad were planning to steal from me, I needed to understand the full scope of their scheme. I started with the obvious places: shared devices, public Wi-Fi logs from Brad's apartment building, Venmo transactions between them that Felicia had forgotten to hide. Nothing illegal, nothing that required actual hacking, just the kind of digital breadcrumbs that careless people leave behind when they think they're smarter than they actually are. The picture that emerged was worse than I'd imagined. Brad wasn't just Felicia's lover. He was her financial advisor in this scheme. He'd helped her research divorce lawyers, calculate asset division, and plan the timing of her departure to maximize her payout. They'd even discussed hiring a private investigator to dig up dirt on me, though apparently my boring lifestyle had yielded nothing useful. That's when I discovered Marcus Chen, Brad's friend from college who worked as a freelance security consultant. In reality, Marcus was a hacker for hire who helped wealthy people solve their digital problems through questionable means. Brad had already paid him $500 to research ways to access my personal accounts. I found Pete Murphy at his usual spot behind the bar at O'Malley's, a dive bar that served as my refuge when home became unbearable. Pete had been my friend since college, one of the few people who'd never been impressed by Felicia's charm or intimidated by her success. "So let me get this straight," Pete said, polishing a glass with the methodical precision of a man who'd been bartending for 20 years. "Your wife is cheating on you with her work husband, planning to steal your money, and hiring hackers to break into your accounts. And yesterday you canceled her birthday dinner." That's the summary, yeah. Alex, my friend, you're playing checkers while they're playing chess. You need to start thinking bigger. I took a long drink of my beer, considering Pete's words. He was right, of course. Canceling dinner reservations was satisfying, but it wasn't going to stop Felicia and Brad from executing their plan. I needed to get ahead of them, to turn their own tactics against them. "What do you have in mind?" Pete grinned, the kind of smile that had gotten us both into trouble during our college years. "Well, if they want to play dirty, maybe it's time to show them what dirty really looks like." That night, I sat in my home office planning my counterattack. Felicia was upstairs, probably texting Brad about their latest setback and refining their timeline for the money grab. She had no idea that her boring, emotionally stunted husband was about to demonstrate exactly how dangerous a cybersecurity expert could be when properly motivated. I started by securing my own assets, moving money to accounts that Felicia didn't know existed, and changing passwords on everything important. Then I began laying traps, digital honeypots that would alert me the moment Marcus or anyone else tried to breach my security. But the real genius of my plan wasn't technological, it was psychological. If Felicia and Brad wanted to destroy my life, I was going to let them try. And when they failed spectacularly, the whole world would see exactly who they really were. The first trap was sprung on a Tuesday morning. My phone buzzed with an alert that someone was attempting to access my new bank account, using credentials stolen from an old, abandoned account I'd deliberately left vulnerable. The IP address traced back to Brad's apartment building, and the timestamp coincided perfectly with Marcus Chen's usual working hours. I smiled as I watched the failed login attempts pile up. Marcus was good, but he wasn't good enough to breach a system designed by someone who spent his days protecting Fortune 500 companies from exactly this kind of attack. Instead of blocking the attempts, I let them continue while I traced Marcus's digital footprint back to his own systems. By lunchtime, I had access to his client list, his payment records, and most importantly, his communications with Brad about the job. The messages were even more damaging than I'd hoped. Brad had explicitly asked Marcus to clean out my accounts and transfer the money to a cryptocurrency wallet that couldn't be traced. This wasn't just adultery anymore. It was conspiracy to commit theft. I forwarded the evidence to my lawyer, then began phase 2 of my plan. Brad Halverson lived in a glass tower downtown, the kind of sterile luxury apartment that screamed, "I have money but no personality." His building's parking garage was protected by security cameras and keycard access, but it wasn't protected against a man who knew how to exploit the building's public Wi-Fi network to temporarily disable the camera system. Pete met me outside the building at 2 a.m., carrying a duffel bag full of supplies. "You sure about this, Alex? Once we cross this line, there's no going back." They crossed the line when they decided to steal from me. We're just evening the score. The elevator to the parking garage was empty, and Brad's silver BMW sat in its assigned spot, like a monument to his arrogance. I'd done my research. The car was leased, not owned, which meant damaging it would hurt his pride more than his wallet. We worked quickly and quietly. 4 slashed tires, sugar in the gas tank, and a USB drive taped to his windshield containing a simple message, "Nice try, amateur. Next time, hire better help, -AM." But the real masterpiece was what we did to his apartment. Pete had learned lockpicking during his misspent youth, and Brad's supposedly secure door yielded to his skills in under 3 minutes. We didn't steal anything. That would have been criminal. Instead, we rearranged everything just slightly, enough to make Brad question his own sanity. Books moved from shelves to coffee tables, kitchen items relocated to different cabinets, his expensive espresso machine filled with salt instead of sugar. And in his bedroom, we left a printed copy of his text messages with Marcus, highlighted for emphasis. "Think he'll get the message?" Pete asked as we slipped back into the stairwell. "Oh, he'll get it. The question is whether he'll be smart enough to back down." The answer came the next morning, when Felicia's phone started ringing at 6 a.m. I could hear Brad's panicked voice through the speaker as he described the vandalism, the break-in, the evidence that someone knew about their plan. "He's on to us, Felicia. Your husband isn't the pushover we thought he was." "Alex couldn't have done this," Felicia said, but her voice lacked conviction. "He's not capable of this kind of thing." I almost laughed out loud. After 12 years of marriage, my wife still had no idea who I really was. That afternoon, Felicia tried a different approach. She sent Nina Rodriguez, a woman from her yoga class, to seduce me into revealing my financial information. Nina was attractive in an obvious way, with the kind of calculated charm that worked on lonely men who didn't see it coming. She accidentally bumped into me at my usual coffee shop, spilling her latte on my laptop bag and insisting on buying me a replacement drink. Within 10 minutes, she was asking about my work, my hobbies, and whether I was married. "I'm going through a difficult divorce," I told her, playing along with the charade. "My wife turned out to be a lying, cheating sociopath who's trying to steal my money." Nina's eyes lit up with fake sympathy. "That's terrible. You seem like such a nice guy. I bet she doesn't appreciate what she has." We talked for an hour, and Nina was skilled enough to make the conversation feel natural while steering it toward my finances. She wanted to know about my investments, my savings, my plans for the future. I fed her just enough real information to make it believable, while mixing in complete fiction about offshore accounts and cryptocurrency holdings. "You know," Nina said, leaning closer, "maybe we could have dinner sometime. You shouldn't have to go through this alone." "That's very kind of you," I replied. "But I should probably mention that I charge for dinner dates now. My wife's affair taught me that nothing in life is really free." Nina's smile faltered slightly, but she pressed on. "I'm not looking for anything serious, just two adults enjoying each other's company." That's when I heard Felicia's voice in the background, coming through Nina's Bluetooth earpiece. She was being coached in real time, fed lines and questions by my cheating wife. I stood up abruptly, startling Nina. "You know what? I just remembered I have somewhere else to be. Tell your boss I said hello." Nina's face went pale as she realized her cover was blown. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't. And I'm sure it's just a coincidence that my wife's best friend recommended this exact coffee shop yesterday. Enjoy your latte, Nina. Try not to spill it on anyone else." I walked away, leaving her to explain to Felicia how their honey trap had backfired. But the real satisfaction came that evening when Stacy Morrison, Felicia's best friend and the agency's HR director, got drunk at their usual happy hour spot and started gossiping about the affair. Zoe Kim, a junior designer at the agency, was recording everything on her phone for her TikTok account. She thought she was just documenting another night out with the girls, but she accidentally captured Stacy's drunken confession about Brad and Felicia's relationship. "They think they're so sneaky," Stacy slurred into the camera, "but everyone at the office knows Brad's been screwing Felicia for months. They're not even discreet about it anymore." By the time Zoe sobered up and realized what she'd recorded, the video had already been automatically uploaded to the agency's private Slack channel. Within hours, everyone at Pacific Northwest's hottest advertising agency knew that their creative director was having an affair with her married subordinate. The fallout was immediate and devastating. Brad was called into HR the next morning and suspended pending an investigation into workplace misconduct. Felicia was asked to take a leave of absence while the company reviewed their professional conduct policies. But the best part was the text message I received from Marcus Chen that afternoon. "Job's off. Your wife's boyfriend can't pay me anymore. No hard feelings, man. You won this round." I forwarded the message to my lawyer with a note. "Evidence of conspiracy to commit theft. Please add to the file." Phase 3 was about to begin. The Pacific Northwest Tech Expo was the kind of event where Felicia and Brad had planned to network their way into new jobs after leaving the agency. They'd submitted a presentation about innovative marketing strategies in the digital age, probably hoping to impress potential employers with their creative partnership. I bought a ticket under a fake name and spent the morning studying the convention center's layout. 20 years in cybersecurity had taught me to think like both a defender and an attacker, and the expo's Wi-Fi network was laughably insecure. Felicia and Brad took the stage at 2 p.m., looking nervous but determined to salvage their professional reputations. Their presentation was actually quite good. They did have genuine creative chemistry, even if they'd expressed it in the worst possible way. I waited until they were halfway through their pitch before triggering the first disruption. A carefully crafted signal sent through the building's public Wi-Fi network caused the fire alarm system to malfunction, creating a piercing shriek that made it impossible to continue speaking. In the confusion that followed, Brad's laptop disappeared from the podium. He'd left it unattended while helping evacuate the audience, and someone had taken advantage of the chaos to walk away with it. That someone was Pete, who handed the laptop to me in the parking garage, before melting back into the crowd of confused expo attendees. "This feels like overkill," Pete said as we walked toward my car. "They tried to steal my life savings," I replied. "This is proportional response." Brad came running into the garage 20 minutes later, frantically searching for his missing laptop. He looked like a man whose entire world had just collapsed, which wasn't far from the truth. The laptop contained not just his presentation, but also his communications with Marcus, his financial records, and his plans for the future with Felicia. "Looking for something?" I called out from beside my car. Brad spun around, his face a mixture of panic and rage. "Alex, I should have known." "Should have known what? That actions have consequences? That stealing from people might make them angry?" He stepped closer, trying to intimidate me with his superior height and gym-built physique. "Give me back my laptop." "I don't have your laptop, Brad. But even if I did, I'm not sure you'd want it back. I hear the hard drive is full of evidence that could send you to prison." "You son of a bitch. You think you're so smart, don't you? Smarter than a man who hires hackers over text message and stores the evidence on his work computer." That's when Brad lost control. He swung at me with a wild haymaker that telegraphed itself from 3 feet away. I stepped aside and let his momentum carry him into the concrete pillar behind me, then grabbed him by his expensive shirt and slammed him against the wall. "Listen carefully," I said, my voice deadly quiet. "You tried to steal my money. You corrupted my wife. You hired criminals to attack my accounts. And now you want to fight me in a parking garage like we're teenagers." I slapped him across the face, hard enough to leave a red mark, but not hard enough to cause permanent damage. The sound echoed through the garage, like a gunshot. "If you ever come near my accounts, my wife, or my life again, you'll wish you'd stuck to PowerPoint presentations." "Do we understand each other?" Brad nodded, his earlier bravado completely deflated. I released him and stepped back, watching as he slumped against the wall like a deflated balloon. "Oh, and Brad, your laptop is in the lost and found at the information desk. You might want to hurry. I hear they only hold items for 24 hours. I walked away, leaving him to contemplate his choices in the echoing silence of the parking garage. But my phone was already buzzing with the next crisis. Felicia had discovered that their agency's Slack channel was in chaos. Zoe's accidental recording had triggered a flood of gossip and speculation about workplace relationships, and HR had scheduled emergency meetings with everyone involved. "Alex, we need to talk," Felicia's text message read. "This has gone too far." "Has it?" I texted back. "I'm just getting started." The truth was, I was getting tired of the games. The revenge had been satisfying, but it was also exhausting. I wanted this to end, but I wanted it to end on my terms, with complete victory and total vindication. That's when my lawyer called, with the news I'd been waiting for. "Alex, I've reviewed all the evidence you've provided. We have enough to file criminal charges for conspiracy to commit theft, attempted computer fraud, and adultery in a marriage dissolution case. Are you ready to take this to court?" I looked out my office window at the Seattle skyline, thinking about the woman upstairs who'd shared my life for 12 years before deciding to destroy it. Thinking about Brad, probably still searching for his laptop in the convention center. Thinking about Marcus, scrambling to cover his tracks after his hacking attempt failed. "Yes," I said. "Let's finish this." The King County Courthouse was busier than I'd expected on a Thursday morning. Lawyers hurried through hallways carrying briefcases full of other people's misery, while defendants and plaintiffs waited nervously for their names to be called. I sat in the gallery with my attorney, David Chen, no relation to Marcus, despite the shared surname, watching Felicia and her lawyer huddle together at the defendant's table. She'd hired Jennifer Walsh, one of Seattle's most expensive divorce attorneys, probably hoping that superior legal firepower could overcome the mountain of evidence against her. "Your Honor," David began when our case was called, We're here today because the defendant conspired with her lover to steal marital assets and hired a criminal hacker to breach my client's personal accounts. He laid out the evidence methodically. Bank records showing Felicia's attempted transfers. Screenshots of her text messages with Brad planning their financial escape. Marcus Chen's communications detailing his hacking attempts. Nina Rodriguez's recorded conversation about the honey trap scheme. Jennifer Walsh fought back gamely, arguing that the evidence was circumstantial, that the text messages were taken out of context, that my own actions in canceling birthday reservations showed I was an unreliable narrator of events, but the facts were overwhelming. Detective Sarah Mendez, who'd been assigned to investigate the hacking attempt, testified that Marcus Chen had confessed to the computer fraud in exchange for a reduced sentence. Brad Halverson, called as a witness, admitted under oath to planning the theft but claimed it was Felicia's idea. Mr. Halverson, David asked during cross-examination, did you or did you not tell Marcus Chen to clean out my client's bank accounts? Yes, but Felicia said Alex would never notice the missing money. And did you or did you not plan to use stolen marital assets to fund a vacation to Cabo with the defendant? Yes, but it wasn't stealing. Felicia said she was entitled to half of everything anyway. I watched Felicia's face crumble as her lover threw her under the bus to save himself. This was the man she'd chosen over 12 years of marriage, a coward who couldn't even maintain loyalty under pressure. Judge Patricia Morrison had heard enough. Mrs. Mercer, you are hereby ordered to pay restitution for the attempted theft, a fine of $10,000 for conspiracy charges, and sentenced to 200 hours of community service. Mr. Halverson, you'll serve 100 hours of community service and attend mandatory counseling for your role in this scheme. No prison time, as I'd expected. The amounts involved weren't large enough to warrant incarceration, and both defendants were first-time offenders with professional reputations to consider. But the public humiliation was devastating. As we filed out of the courtroom, I noticed the small crowd that had gathered in the hallway. Word of the case had spread through Seattle's tight-knit business community, and several people I recognized from industry events had come to witness the spectacle. Felicia's friends were notably absent. Stacy Morrison had distanced herself after the Slack channel incident. Nina Rodriguez had disappeared entirely after her seduction attempt failed. Even Brad's colleagues from the agency had abandoned him once the affair became public knowledge. Alex, Felicia called out as I reached the courthouse steps. Please, can we talk privately? I turned to face the woman who'd been my wife, noting how much she'd changed over the past few weeks. The confident creative director was gone, replaced by someone who looked smaller, older, defeated. What's left to talk about, Felicia? I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean much now, but I need you to know that I never meant for things to go this far. You meant to steal my money and run away with Brad. The only thing you didn't mean was to get caught. Rain had started falling, the kind of persistent Seattle drizzle that soaked through everything eventually. Felicia's carefully styled hair was already beginning to wilt, and her expensive makeup was starting to run. I loved you once, she said quietly. I know you probably don't believe that anymore, but it was real. Maybe it was. But love isn't enough when it's not accompanied by basic human decency. Brad appeared at the edge of the crowd, looking like he wanted to approach, but lacking the courage to face me again. His career was over. No advertising agency would hire a creative director who'd been publicly exposed for workplace affairs and theft conspiracies. His reputation was destroyed, his professional network had abandoned him, and his romantic future with Felicia had died in the courtroom. You got everything you wanted, Felicia said, her voice bitter with defeat. I hope it was worth it. I didn't want any of this, Felicia. I wanted a wife who loved me more than she loved herself. I wanted a marriage built on honesty instead of lies. I wanted a partner who wouldn't steal from me the moment she found someone more exciting. The crowd was listening now, drawn by the drama playing out on the courthouse steps. I could see phones recording, social media posts being composed, the final humiliation being documented for posterity. You wanted everything, I continued, my voice carrying across the plaza. My money, my house, my future, and Brad's promises. Now you have nothing except community service and a criminal record. Enjoy your volunteer work, Felicia. Next time you want to cuddle with someone, make sure it's with your own money. Brad finally worked up the courage to approach, his face red with embarrassment and rage. You think you've won something here, Alex. You destroyed 2 careers, ruined 2 lives, turned everyone against us. What kind of man does that? I looked at him for a long moment, This pathetic figure who'd helped my wife plan to steal from me, and now wanted to play the victim. The kind of man who doesn't let people walk all over him, I said. The kind of man who fights back when someone tries to destroy his life. The kind of man you'll never be. The rain was falling harder now, and the crowd was beginning to disperse. Felicia stood alone on the courthouse steps, mascara running down her cheeks, watching her former life disappear into the Seattle gloom. I turned and walked away, Pete falling into step beside me as we headed toward my car. Behind us, I could hear Brad trying to comfort Felicia, their voices fading into the sound of rain on concrete. "Feel better?" Pete asked as we reached the parking garage. "I feel finished," I said. "Like I can finally close this chapter and move on. Any regrets?" I considered the question as I unlocked my car. 12 years of marriage reduced to a courthouse drama and a pile of legal documents. A woman I'd once loved, now facing community service and social exile. A man who'd tried to steal from me, left broken and unemployed. "No," I said finally. "No reservations anymore." I drove home through the rain, past the restaurant where Felicia's birthday celebration had ended in tears, past the coffee shop where Nina had tried to seduce me, past the convention center where Brad had lost everything in a parking garage confrontation. The house felt different when I walked through the door. Cleaner somehow, like a weight had been lifted from the air itself. Felicia's belongings were gone, moved out during the trial proceedings. Her presence had been erased as completely as her birthday reservations. I poured myself a drink and sat in my home office, looking out at the city lights reflecting off the wet streets. Somewhere out there, Felicia was beginning her community service, probably cleaning up parks or serving meals at homeless shelters. Brad was updating his resume and trying to explain his employment gap to potential employers. Marcus Chen was serving his own sentence and learning that hacking for hire carried real consequences. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "You win. We're leaving Seattle. Don't contact us again." I deleted the message without responding. There was nothing left to say, no final words that would make any of this mean more than it already did. The underdog had bitten back, and the bite had been lethal.